Hallo Leute, ich heiße Boris und I am a DDR. GDR Doctor. Doctor of the German Democratic Republic, also known as East Germany. Yes, folks, this is no Halloween skit. Today, I'll tell you a terrifying story of East Germany draining blood of its prisoners for dollars, pounds and Westdeutsche marks. I tell you a blood-curdling history of how communists and capitalists treated poor people of the German Democratic Republic and what it had to do with Ikea. Strange enough, lass uns anfangen! What you see behind me is the East Germany's Ministry for State Security Stasi prisons. The Stasi were East German secret police. Here ended up nearly everyone who put dreams of freedom into action, whether it was planning an escape from a communist heaven to rotten imperialist West, or writing a book, a poem revealing too much of what communism really was. It didn't matter if you were a professor or a factory worker. Once you were a suspect, your dossier grew along like a child. Each month your file was getting thicker and thicker. You were invigilated, filmed, recorded, bugged. Your friends were infiltrated. Some of them were already Stasi agents. Hell, sometimes your wife or husband also was a Stasi agent assigned to you by the state. Even if you weren't literally in a prison, you were in an invisible one. But today we'll talk about the worst thing that the German Democratic Republic did to its own citizens, only to gain American dollars and other rotten West currencies. By the way, if you want to know more about US dollars found in communism, click here. So, according to the quote you just saw, if you have health and need gold and silver, you just have to change the equation and sell the health. That's exactly what East Germany did, having all those political prisoners who, according to communists, were worse than common criminals, and being in an urgent need for hard West currencies was, in their twisted minds, the best option to make money on those people. And the other terrifying thing is that freedom-loving West agreed to it, and both parties made a deal. The 1980s was the time of AIDS pandemic affecting the West. At that time, it was considered a disease of people leading promiscuous lifestyle. A rotten West by the communists' definition, so it was natural for communists to advertise the blood they were selling as AIDS-free, since the communists from the Eastern Bloc boasted that there were no homosexuals in their countries. DDR made draining blood of its citizens the main source of foreign currency. We learn from the Stasi files that the blood donations made in Stasi prisons were compulsory. According to Rudolf Uchlik, who was one of the former East Germany's health officials, visiting prisoners was, quote, worth the effort, because every time we had 60-70 blood donors. The voluntary donations throughout the country were advertised as patriotic duty, and while no donor received any remuneration, fat checks landed on secret DDR accounts of Foreign Trade Ministry, or were immediately invested via Western intermediaries, shell companies. Stasi instructed East German doctors to always deny the blood came from a person who had contact with AIDS or who was a homosexual. And since rotten West was for communists already rotten, no one actually bothered there to test the blood leaving East Germany. The Stasi were asked by General Paul Kinberg, who was the head of ideological diversion, to tread lightly to cause no damage to the reputation of the GDR. One of the biggest buyers of communist blood in the West was the Bavarian Red Cross. The deal went smoothly until 1986, when irregularities were discovered and numerous hepatitis infections were connected to the GDR blood. After time, the Bavarian Red Cross officially admitted to buying East Germans' blood and uttered deep regret of the deal, especially since some of the blood came from prisoners. Come on, Bavarian Red Cross! The communists literally built a wall to break off from you, considered you an enemy, and you thought that they sold you top-quality blood, harvested from only willing to help you East German citizens? Were you really that bloody naive? There is a famous communist saying, "Нас много." There is plenty of us, meaning when the communists set a goal, lives of individuals didn't count in achieving it. In the GDR, the goal was obtaining as much Western currencies as possible, and since human lives had no value in order to achieve it, communists, apart from selling blood, also sold their patients as medical test subjects. And again, a deal with Rotten West was struck. Companies like, for example, Bayer, Pfizer, Sandoz and Roche tested nearly everything they had in their labs, from antidepressants, since depression behind the Iron Curtain was unavoidable, through chemotherapy drugs to heart medications. The price set by East Germany was 100,000 of West Deutsche Marks per clinical study. The cause for seeking by Western companies human testing ground, not regulated by strict laws and conventions, was a thalidomide scandal from 1960s. Thalidomide was a West German drug, also known as Cantergan, prescribed for women for morning sickness and anxiety, tested on humans even in the USA, causing thousands of newborns to be deformed or dead. A drug was developed by a Nazi war criminal doctor, Heinrich Müchte, who during World War II experimented on concentration camp prisoners, many of whom died. In the West, a free man who developed a drug which was again tested on humans with catastrophic consequences. Sometimes history shows that Rotten West was really an accurate term. The trials conducted by West companies in East Germany lasted until the fall of the wall. 50,000 East Germans served as test subjects. Some of those patients died because of those trials. Again, after many years, the companies stated their deepest regrets and yada yada yada. A few donations were made to medical centers. Babkis, in comparison to fortune those poor souls brought them. The fact is, when there's a buyer, there is a seller. We already know that East Germany sold its citizens' blood, sold its patients for medical tests, and finally, sold forced labor of political prisoners, dissidents. Ikea, Swedish furniture chain store, achieved great commercial success with their Billy line of bookshelves, maybe because they were made by the DDR imprisoned intellectuals who valued literature enough to make the best shelves for the books they loved. Or, quote, 1 in 3 Sunday lunches in the United Kingdom were cooked in a kitchen from MFI, and 60% of British children were conceived in a bedroom from MFI. Well, 60% of British children. There must be at least some East Germany's share in the UK's population, since MFI imported some of its products from East Germany. In Aldi, German discount supermarket chain, you could buy the best Esda tights made by female political prisoners of the Hoheneck prison. Only the enlightened political prisoner of DDR, forced to work in Fahrzeugelektrik-Roller, could give the Western Volkswagens the best fog lights, right? Of course, when the Berlin Wall fell and secret files came to light, all companies expressed their deepest regrets. They denied any knowledge that the products they ordered in the GDR were made with the use of the political prisoners' labor. If they knew, they'd never, so sorry, and so on. Again, pecunia non olet. Despite the actual wall dividing two totally different ideologies, they found common language. Money. Capitalists bought without questions. Communists sold without hesitation. The history of the GDR trade with the West shows that there is no ideology that would care about human life. Freedom-loving West loved freedom only as far as their own citizens were concerned, and communists didn't give a scheisse about the lives of individuals when there were pockets to fill. Und that is all, dear Freunden. Thank you very much for watching, und bitte give us thumbs up. Tschüss!